Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Sung in the dead of the night. Goodbye, so long, farewell, all I'll be. Ooh, oblivion. Throw me in the ocean. Ooh, see if I can swim.
Welcome, everyone, to an absolutely spectacular, fantabulous, simply awesome episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Oh, I've been waiting for this one for a while now. I knew it was coming. She didn't know it was coming, but I knew it was coming because I said, I have to have this happen when it does. Because today I have a developmental editor, publishing strategist, and creative coach with more than 15 years of helping writers get unstuck, find their authentic voice, and tell their story. Her debut memoir, Tracking Giants, is about searching for the champion trees of British Columbia. It's pretty cool stuff. We're going to get into it in a minute. And I'm excited to have her on because Thrive Love listeners, my editorial mixologist and B5G sister from another mister, the amazing Amanda Lewis. Amanda, how are you today?
Oh, Lou, can you introduce me wherever I go, please?
Wherever you go. If you're there and I'm in the same building and you need to be introduced, I don't care if it's a person, I don't care if it's on stage, I don't care if it's for a group of people in a book, I will gladly do that for you.
Grocery run on a Wednesday morning? Lou.
I'm available on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays are very busy.
No problem, I can adjust.
Listeners need to know that I've had the pleasure of working with Amanda. And obviously for those who listen to the show frequently, my book, Speakeasy, could not have been created without the brilliance, guidance, structure, yelling at me every once in a while, superstardom of this wonderful human being on this planet. So to a whole, I don't know, tens of thousands of audience that listen to this, Amanda, my personal thank you to you for your help in helping me, as I speak for probably every single person you've ever worked with. And for the services that you do. So thank you for that. See, I kicked off with the thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Lou. It's my pleasure. And I don't think I yelled much, to be honest. It's not really my style. Yeah.
It's not her style.
A stern talking to.
Literally the definition of like two different sides of personalities and people. We would be that, and sometimes that's the mix that you need that makes things come out great.
That's it. Yeah. Mixologist.
So here's what I want to do. I don't want to talk about me anymore. I want to talk about you. I want to do a little rewind here. I don't want to go all the way back to the womb. I kind of want to go to where this thing that you've been working on now has happened. I gave it in the bio a little bit, but maybe paint that picture for our listeners a little bit so they can learn a little about you. And then we'll start to look up and start to track some really large things. How about that?
No, sounds perfect. So I'll bring you way back to 2018. And I work as a book editor, and I'd been living in Toronto for about 9 years, and I was working at Penguin Random House and really loved that job, loved the pace of the city, until I fell out of love with it. And it just became really overwhelming for me, and I felt really burned out, and I really missed the West Coast where I grew up, so West Coast of Canada. So I gave up the single lady apartment and the job and the relationships and all this, and I moved back to the West Coast. But as anyone who's moved across the country knows, and Lou, we could talk about this, it's pretty exhausting to do a big cross-country move. And between all the career striving and the moving, I just felt totally burned out. And what started to bring me back to myself was getting out into nature and doing short hikes in the mountains around Vancouver where I was living. And I thought, okay, so this is kind of interesting to me, and I'm an editor, and editors like to put framework on things, and I wonder if people would be interested in reading a blog about some of these trips to local mountains and these hikes. And my friend Kate, who's a fellow author and adventurer, she said, like, it's kind of a boring idea, like no one wants to read that blog, but why don't you go visit all these champion trees? And the champion trees Excuse me. The champion trees are the largest of their species. Sorry, Lou.
No worries. This is why we have water on call
On
for all
call.
our podcasts. Yeah.
That's why we are made of water. So
Yeah.
the champion trees are the largest of their species, and they are recorded in this thing called the BC Big Tree Registry. And the BC Big Tree Registry, which is housed at University of British Columbia, is one of the many big tree registries around the world. Excuse me, but I had never heard of a big tree registry at all. I knew big trees, but I didn't think that anyone was keeping track of these things. Anyway, at the time, there were about 43 champion trees, and I decided to go see all of them,
Wow.
not knowing what all of them were, where they were, and they were growing all over the province, which is a very varied geography. It's a huge province. The trees are growing up mountains and down valleys and on remote islands. And I thought, oh yeah, I can do this. It'll bring me back from my burnout. It's just the challenge I need, and it will be like a walk in the park. It'll turn me into this adventurous person, and isn't that what everyone is in BC? So, yeah, I set out on this quest to find 43 trees in a year.
So I want to give a little background, if you can tell from her slightly sarcastic tone, and that is that you were not necessarily like a hiking, outdoorsy, go do this type person, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I was a pretty novice hiker, like a lot of people on the West Coast. I like doing day hikes, and like I'm an avid cyclist, and I'd done like a cycling trip with that friend Kate up in the Yukon. So limited adventure, but I'd never done a multi-day hike, never gone backpacking, and I realized that I I really needed those skills in hindsight.
So you go out and you set out to see these trees. Help the listeners understand these champion trees. What are we talking about? And you can use whatever system you want, metrics or feet. We should be using meters, I guess. But
Yeah.
how big are champion trees? What are we looking at here?
Well, it really depends. So a champion tree is a champion defined in relation to other trees of its species. And champions are determined based on a combination of the measurements of their diameter at breast height, their height, and their crown spread. I am not really into math. I'm a word person. So measuring trees it hasn't come easy to me. But basically, a champion tree could be huge. It could be a huge Douglas fir, which might be 60 meters tall.
Okay.
It could be a western red cedar that's 6 meters in diameter. And
Mm.
it could be a Sitka alder that's 6 inches. So
Wow.
because every tree is different. Some trees grow really big, some trees grow really small. And a champion Sitka alder would be a champion, and it would be in the registry alongside a champion western red cedar. They're both big trees.
So I want to understand the progress. There's going out and checking out and hunting down tracking these giants. There's writing the blog about capturing the notes, which your friend questioned whether anyone would care or not. Although I've learned the more specific and niche something is, the more people are fascinated by it. You can't believe the clubs and groups of people that are in there. But when did the bell go off for somebody who obviously is very close to the publishing world to say, I have a story to tell, or I have a memoir to package together? How did that transformation take place?
It's such a job hazard of being an editor, is that we're always looking for stories wherever we go, and we're talking to someone, we're like, oh, is this person interesting? Like, could they write a book? Reading magazines, watching stories on the TV, like it's just always looking for stories. So I knew about 6 months in of writing the blog, I thought this is a book. And a friend and mentor of mine who works in publishing, she's a publisher at a big house, she said, this is a book, right? And I said, yeah. I'm starting to think that. So I had these blog posts, and they just, I would throw them up in kind of a white hot heat and like go back to work the next day, because I had a really busy day job at the time. And the value of that is that I didn't overthink them, and they could become they were full of all these references to literary figures and pop culture, which is just how I like to write.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't too earnest about trees. But when I sat down to write a book proposal, started to take on the shape of like a typical kind of tree book, which the quintessential tree book in British Columbia is a book called The Golden Spruce by John Valiant, and it's about a tree that had golden needles that was growing up in Haida in northern BC. And it's just the best book. It goes deep into the history of forestry in BC and the geology and the geography. And I thought, I'm going to write this book, but I'm going to do it 43 times. And that just didn't work out. So the book writing process itself was the bigger adventure, I think, than trying to find these trees.
Okay, so talk about getting to flip the seat or switch the microphones or sit in the other seat. From the writing process to somebody who's very good at coaching and helping other people and having to figure out how you were going to write. Let's talk about the writing process. As you know, every author is very different. Some are regimented and scheduled, and they've got a time slot, and that's when they're writing. Others kind of go with the breeze, if you would, and when the moment hits, or when the mood hits, or when the message connects, that's when they start to write. Did Amanda Lewis discover her writing style during this process?
Yeah, my writing style is like gripping with my fingernails. Just like, why is this so hard? I'm so sorry to all my authors. Like, over 15 years, I'm like, just do it, just hit your deadline. What's so hard about it? It's very, very difficult to write a book, and it's very difficult to do that when you're working a day job and you have relationships and family obligations, and when your subject requires you to be out in the bush every weekend, looking for trees and taking notes about these hikes and driving for 8 hours at a stretch to go find this tree that might not be standing anymore. And that's like prime writing time. So I found that I couldn't do both. And I was really hard on myself about it for a while, because I'd go out all weekend and then I'd be really tired from hiking, and then I'd cycle off to a cafe before work, and I'd try to write for half an hour, and I wouldn't really get anywhere, and then I'd go and work my job and just keep doing it. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't get this done. And I had a tearful call to my editor, Paula, who is a saint among writers. And I said, I can't hit my deadline. I can't do this. And so we agreed to push the deadline by a year, which is the grace period that I needed. And then I took a sabbatical from my day job and finished the book. And that was the biggest gift I could give myself.
Listeners need to know that around the time that Speakeasy came out was about the time that you started to take your sabbatical, if I'm correct. I think, if I have the timing there right. And I learned that you were going off to write a book, and I remember I had a conversation with you, and not knowing much about you or any of the stuff that you were going on, and you were going after these very large trees and going to write about them. From that point on, when you started to be dedicated to focus on doing it, and this was the gift, what changed in the way that you were able to write, or even maybe the mindset on maybe even the story that came out? Did you get it? Did it give you more of a chance to kind of explore your creativity and your writing together?
It really did. Yeah. So taking that break from the writing of it, when I said I have to do one or the other, and I decided to focus on my job. And I had recently moved to this house where I am now on this small island, and I thought, I have to focus on the move and settling in. And the shift that came for me was I was painting a couple of chairs after the move, and I was listening to this book called Yearbook by Seth Rogen, who I love. He's a good Canadian kid. Yeah, he's from Vancouver, and his book Yearbook is a memoir about growing up in the Lower Mainland, where I grew up. And I thought, I listened to the book twice. Once when I was packing up my apartment in Vancouver, and then when I was painting these chairs, which are just outside my window here. So I'm always reminded of this story. And I thought, okay, like, I'm guffawing at this book, and I wonder if other people would connect to these stories that I have about growing up in the Lower Mainland and my connection with trees, which has, they've been such a part of my life. like lots of West Coast kids, like we grew up playing in and out of huge tree stumps. It's just
Yeah.
kind of the way it is here. And I thought, I wonder if people would like to read this. And it changed the trajectory of my whole book, where I thought, the times when I feel truest to myself and my writing and the book are when I'm just texting friends about my journey that day. So, like, my really good friend Deandra texted me one time, like, "Did you find the tree?" I said, "No," and she said, "Fuck." I said, "I know," and it's like that. That is every weekend. So I brought that energy into the writing, and that I love corny jokes and tree puns, of which there are many. And like growing up in Surrey, which is a whole other book, which my editor wisely cut out of this draft. She's like, no one needs that much Surrey. Um, and yeah, and just all the cultural references that I love, that, the writers who inspire me and the artists who inspire me. And those became a stand-in for the giants of the title, because, spoiler alert, I didn't find most of the trees because they're very hard to find, but I found that I already had all these giants in my life who are these writers and artists. So they
Oh, I
start to
like it.
fill the pages as you go through the book.
I like that, and I
Yeah.
know our listeners will as too. I was reading the synopsis for the write up, and it's really cool. And I also love the little image of these cloudy rain thing over this animated version of yourself looking up at the tree, which we'll show on the landing page for everybody to go check out on
And
this.
I love that so much, that little storm cloud person, that it's become the little emblem for me. And I actually had stickers made of this
Oh, I
little
love
person. I
that.
don't know if you can see
There it
this.
is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
good. It was
Because that is me.
it was the first thing I noticed was like, I'm like, what kind of cloudy gray cloud is going over for her? Oh, or just the adventure.
Yeah.
There's a question I ask every authors, and this one I'm dying to know. There is a gift that you give in creating a book like this, Tracking Giants. Every author who's putting this gift to the world of what they've written, and that's the gift that we receive. But there's always a happy accident and a special gift that the author gets when they've put this together. Amanda, what was the gift for you in putting out Tracking Giants?
I really like this question. I think it's to really recognize that I'm also a writer. And people often say to editors, "Oh, did you always want to be a writer?" And it's kind of an unfair question. It'd be like asking, like, I don't know, a financial advisor, "Did you always want to be a doctor?" Like, they're just different. They're different jobs, and one isn't better than the other. But I always wanted to be a writer alongside being an editor. And the gift for myself was allowing myself the time and space to actually focus on this.
Yeah.
And it's given so much back to me. And one of my clients actually wrote to me over the weekend and said, "I'm so happy for you with the success of your book, because you've given that happiness to so many authors that you've worked with. Like, you've allowed them to step into that happiness for themselves, and now you get to experience it." And it's a wonderful feeling, like, unlike anything that I had anticipated, because editors are great at managing expectations. We're great at managing authors' expectations, because so many authors, I say, "Oh, what's your goal for the book?" And they're like, "New York Times bestseller, cover of Vogue." I'm like, okay, let's go a little smaller. Like, how about finish? How about, like, finish the chapter? Publish the book in a way that works for you. And my expectation was finish it and have, like, two people really like it and one person hate it. And that's happened. So that's good.
I want the listeners to know, we noted, I never requested to be on the cover of Vogue nor New York Times bestselling author with my
That's
book.
true.
I just want to make
No,
that clear.
you
Maybe
manage
because
your expectations.
I had realistic expectations.
Yeah.
I want to get to the fun part here, but we're going to do it in a little bit of a different order. Let's do the admin part of the show. Share with the
Okay.
listeners all the places people can find you, Tracking Giants, websites, URLs. We will put them in the show notes. It gets more engagement when they hear it from you.
Okay, so the best place to find me is my website, which is amandalewis.org, O-R-G, or Instagram, which is AEM Lewis, on Instagram. If you go on amandalewis.org, there's a little tab at the top. You can click Tracking Giants and get all the latest and greatest stuff on that. And then my newsletter is where you'll find my best writing and publishing tips, and I send that out every Friday morning.
Awesome. We're going to go down Fun Street in one of the
Woo!
most unique ways. Fun Street has since adapted on Thrive Loud. More recently, because I had a guest come on who literally got me a speakeasy shot glass, and something that we should do, which is currently in a box somewhere because we're still mid-move as we're recording here in temporary studios at Thrive Loud. But the general idea is we take a little shot of gumption, a little extra boost to give us through the Fun Street part of speakeasy pubs crawl, if you would. But I want to start off by asking you, can you share with the listeners what you shared with me was one of your all-time favorite movies?
Oh yeah, my all-time favorite movie is Wayne's World.
Under the category of what? I was like, okay, by the way, I love Wayne's World.
Shouldn't you say, excuse me?
Excuse me,
Baking
exactly.
powder?
Maybe it's the humor. Maybe it's those little comments. Maybe it's the fact that he's Canadian. I could see that too.
Yeah.
But what is it that connects so much with that movie with you? What is it?
Yeah, people often expect me to be some kind of highfalutin literary type, which I am. I mean, behind me on the wall, there's a portrait of literary heavyweight Michael Ondaatje, Canada's hero, apart from Leonard Cohen, of course. But I also I love raunchy humor. I love silly humor, and I grew up in Surrey, and the part of Surrey where I grew up, and Surrey is just outside of Vancouver, and the part of Surrey where I grew up is very working class and just like very down to earth area, and there was a lot of like metalheads.
Yeah.
Just a lot of fun driving around in a car, which really Wayne's World is all about. So it's the ultimate nostalgic movie for me, and it defined my youth, and it just kind of imprinted the way movies do at that age, and it's exactly my type of humor, so it remains my favorite movie.
There was an interview with Lorne Michaels, as you know, who's one of the Saturday Night Live he is the Saturday Night Live executive producer and one of the executive producers for Wayne's World and a lot of the Saturday Night Live cast members. And when he was presented with the idea that the entire Bohemian Rhapsody song would be played in a car with the two of them jamming throughout the whole movie, not just a little piece of it, the entire song from beginning to end, he said, this is the most ridiculous waste of time. We're talking about the economic effects. One, that movie made hundreds of millions of dollars. Two, it relaunched Bohemian Rhapsody to be the number one song at that time. And as you know this, because I know you know this stuff, when the new Bohemian Rhapsody movie came out, when Queen's movie recently, about 3-4 years ago, it also became the number one song. It's the first time ever that the same song has become number one 3 times on different pop charts at 3 different decades. How about that?
I didn't know that, Lou. That's amazing.
Yes.
What I can tell you is in my CD player in my car right now, I've got Queen, and I just listen to Bohemian Rhapsody on repeat because it is such a good song.
Hold on. I just have to rewind to the fact you actually still have a CD player in your car.
I do have a CD player in my car, and it's a new car. And
wow.
Yeah. And when I was buying it, I said, because I'm the type of person who walks into like a retail establishment and is like, don't try to sell me anything, but I need something, but don't try to sell it to me. So I said, I'll walk out of here with this car if you can promise me there's a CD player, thinking this is going to be the ultimate deal breaker. He's like, there is a CD player. I don't know how. There is one. But
like,
I'm like, okay, where do I sign?
There's some guy in the back who's like, get that one CD player and jam it in.
Get a CD player. Yeah, it's not so hard.
Hop into the DeLorean and go back to 1985 and get it.
Oh my God, a DeLorean. There we go.
All right, so we're going to do the speed round here. And the way this speed round is going to work is I'm going to ask you something. I just want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that lift you up, motivate you, make you feel good. Basically, they make you thrive.
Hey.
All right?
Great.
I have to get used to the way we say it. It is the speakeasy pub crawl. We're just going to stroll down. And there's no wrong answers, by the way, Amanda, because all these answers are yours. Ready? Of late, other than Bohemian Rhapsody, a song that you love to listen to or one that pumps you up.
Ooh, The Returner by Alison. Oh, shoot. What's her last name? Alison Russell.
Okay. We're going to look that up so our team can get that in and play it underneath us when we close out the show. A favorite food that is not a dessert.
Oh, eggs.
Eggs? That's a good one. A favorite dessert.
That is not a food?
Yes. It is, well, I was trying to distinguish between foods that you normally eat versus desserts. Because if I say, what's your favorite food? Like most people are saying ice cream or cake. So I have to break
Right.
it up a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
My favorite dessert is chocolate ganache with raspberry coulis and whipping cream.
I like that. Favorite
Yeah.
food that you can only get in British Columbia and can't get anywhere else? Or it's just the best in British Columbia. That might be the best.
Sushi. I mean, apart from
Yeah.
Japan. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's true.
sushi in BC is very good. Yeah.
Very, very good. An activity you wish you did more of?
Hiking.
An activity you wish you did less of?
Writing.
Really?
It's hard. Lou,
It
it's
is
hard.
You don't have to tell me. An activity that's relatively new to you, other than tracking giants, that you recently tried that is so cool you want to tell everybody else to try it?
Ooh, sailing.
Sailing. Okay, that's very cool. You're new to sailing? That's all new to you? Awesome.
I'm newish to sailing. My dad's a ship captain, so I've always been in and around boats, but I'm very motion sick, like a lot of motion
Yep.
sickness. So we're working on me sailing the boat
I
and
love
feeling
sailing.
less sick. Yeah.
If I could snap my fingers and Amanda Lewis could be anywhere in the world, where is she?
South Florida, of course.
I don't believe that for a minute. I want the real answer.
I would be in New York. Yeah,
Okay.
I went to New York in the spring, and I love it there, and I would go back and just hang out.
The last question here for Amanda is, so obviously you've now been on both sides of the pen, if you would, I guess would be the easiest way to do this, being an editor and being a writer, and you do both. And now you're in that mix. I'm not going to ask you which one you prefer, but maybe what's the greatest lesson or strength that you received as an editor from being a writer?
Oh, an editor from being a writer is deep compassion for authors. Because it's uniquely challenging to write something and to keep coming back to it every day and think this is worth it. And I'm going to keep refining and revising and keep doing that research. And it's exhausting, soul-sucking work at times. And so I really, when authors are like, I got to move that deadline, I'm like, no problem. That is okay.
I'm gonna put a nice little cherry on this episode here, because obviously I got to work with you before you went on this writing and tracking giant adventure, and you displayed a level of compassion for writers back then. So I could only imagine anyone else who's going to work with you in the future, how good that would be. So kudos to you on all this, and I'm so glad
Thanks,
to have
Lou.
had you on the show. But don't you think? I mean, you're just too modest. We have to make her toughen her up a little bit.
Well, thanks very much, Lou. That's really kind.
Continued success to you. Congrats on tracking giants. Everybody go check out the links where you can go get it. And Amanda, it was a pleasure to finally get you here on Thrive Loud.
Ah, Lou, I love it. What a pub crawl.
To all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.